Hey everyone, and welcome to Follow the White Rabbit, where we go down the rabbit hole to explore the intersection of privacy, human rights, technology, and democracy. I'm your host, Alex Kahaya, and today we are speaking with Don Song. Don is CEO and co-founder of Oasis Labs and a professor in the Department of Electrical Engineering and Computer Science at the University of California at Berkeley. Don has spent significant time researching and building security and privacy technologies, specifically in the areas of software, networking, distributed systems, applied cryptography, blockchains, smart contracts, and machine learning. She has been recognized for contributions in computer security through numerous prestigious awards, including the Macarthur Fellowship, the Guggenheim Fellowship, the Alfred P. Sloan Research Fellowship, the NSF Career Award, the MIT Technology Review, T35 Award, the Faculty Research Award, and so many others on the list here. She's ranked the most cited scholar in computer security, and she's a serial entrepreneur, including Incita Security, which was acquired by FireEye Inc., and Menlo Security, and she obtained her PhD from UC Berkeley. Don, you are definitely one of the most accomplished people that I've ever interviewed, and I'm honored to have you on the show and excited to talk to you more about your background and about Oasis Labs and all the good work that you're doing. Thanks so much for being here.
Thanks a lot for having me here.
So, Don, I wanted to learn more first of what it was like for you to grow up in Dalian, China. That was where I'm not sure if that's where you were born, but that was where you grew up and when you moved to the United States. Can you tell me more about those early years in your life?
Sure. Yes. Yeah. Thanks. So Dalian is in the northeast part of China. It's on the tip of a peninsula, and it's actually a little bit like San Francisco. And of course, back then the world was very different. China was very different back then. It was, of course, pre-internet and so on. But it was a lot of fun growing up in Dalian. And then I did my undergraduate study at Tsinghua University. And after that, I came to the United States.
And I was particularly interested in the MacArthur Fellowship Award that you won in your background. This is something that stuck out to me. I can't say that I know any. I guess I know one other person who has had an award like that in robotics, the MacArthur Award, and I'm curious what was that award? What did you win that award for, and what was that like?
Right. So I think you don't particularly win awards win the award for a particular thing. I think it's more like they want to encourage innovative research and contributions. And in general, my work has been in, I have done a lot of work in security and privacy, and in particular, develop new methods to help building secure systems. Actually spans over different sub areas in security, both in terms of software security and also, for example, in applied cryptography, including work has essentially how to build, how to enable, for example, searching encrypted data and so on.
And what got you interested in working in security technologies and privacy and encrypted data? And I think this dovetails into my question about Oasis Labs itself. What inspired you to start Oasis Labs? But it seems like you've spent the bulk of your career working with these kinds of technologies. Why? What caused you to gravitate towards security and privacy?
Right. So my undergraduate was in physics, and then in graduate school, I decided to switch from physics to computer science. And then when I did the switch, I was exploring what I would focus on in my graduate school. And given my physics background, so I wanted to work on something that has strong theoretical foundations. But also at the same time, I wanted to work on something that would be really important in practice, having a lot of practical impacts. And also at the time, actually, security was a very nascent field. It was very small. And also at the time, the internet was just starting. But at the time, I could see that actually security and privacy would be a very important problem as we move more into the digital world. And also given that security is a great combination of theoretical foundations and practical impacts, and it's a very interdisciplinary field, which also suits well for my broad interests. So I decided to focus in security and privacy.
And so, what about why Oasis Labs? What's the inspiration for you for this specific product in technology and the different tools that you're building on top of it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a very good question. So before Oasis Labs, I've also done a couple other startups, as you mentioned, the insider security and manual security, and in both those cases, it was technologies that were developed in my research lab, and then we decided to take it out into the real world and to do the technology transfer to enable the technology to have more real world impact. And similarly here with Oasis Labs, also in my research group, I have been developing technologies essentially in the secure computing and privacy domain. And I think, so I really see that there's a real need in the real world. We are essentially in some sense at an inflection point. The internet has been really successful, has really changed everybody's life. For the most part, I think for the better, but also we are facing many challenges. In particular, about the question of who has controls for data and how data should be utilized. In particular, we see that users are losing control of their data. Their data is being collected and then utilized often in a way that users may not even know how their data has been sold or has been used to target them and so on. And also, users are often not getting sufficient direct benefit from that. And also, a lot of companies are also facing many challenges from the various movements that we have seen, including like Delete Facebook and many of these movements. We see that users are losing trust to these companies who are providing day-to-day services to them. And also, at the same time, the companies are also facing challenges. They continue to suffer from large-scale data breaches, and also now with more privacy regulations such as GDPR and CCPA is becoming more and more challenging and expensive for companies to comply with these regulations. And also on top of that, so I talk with many companies, they often talk about the challenge of using, getting access to data and use data and so on, because a lot of the sensitive data is still being siloed and it's very difficult to actually use the data to get value out of it, to help better improve businesses and services and so on. So really, we are seeing essentially there's a lot of tension and conflict in this area. And at the same time, it's really important that we have all this valuable data, but it's difficult for us to really fully benefit from the data, both from the user side and also from the company side. And in my group, we have been developing various new technologies in the space, also leveraging the new trends in technology development, including secure computing, and also the exciting advancements in cryptography in the space and so on, as well as like differential privacy and so on. Just a lot of really exciting technical advancements that has been made in the in the past number of years. So I think it's a great timing in the sense that it's an important problem that has been put to the forefront of people's minds, and also I think with the exciting technical advancements, it'll be great to see how we can use these new technical solutions and also developing new ones to really help solve this important problem. I think that's the initial genesis of starting the Oasis Labs.
And so how does Oasis Labs, how do the tools that you're building solve some of these problems? You mentioned a couple of things: giving users more control over their data, making sure that they get some value out of that data, and then also while also protecting their privacy and simultaneously making it more usable and accessible for the use cases that it's needed for, right? Like there's healthcare, there's all sorts of different industries that can benefit from that. So how does your technology solve for all those things?
Yes, that's a great question. Of course, I think one thing that everybody really needs to keep in mind is that this is a really complex problem. I would say this is one of the most complex problems, given the various different aspects and dimensions that it covers. Both there's the technical aspect, there's regulatory aspect, and there's also business models, economics aspects. So it's really complex. But with that said, I think so. Really, the goal and the vision that we are shooting for is what we call a responsible data economy. Exactly that. Building essentially a new paradigm where users actually can better control their data and rights to data, and also to enable data to be utilized in a privacy-preserving way and a responsible way, where we also talk about a notion of a stewardship, where the users of the data, ideally, they should be viewed as stewards of the data, in the sense that the data should not just be used to target and manipulate users and influence users in ways that may not be for the benefit of the users. It should really be used to provide better services to the users and for the benefits of the users. And with that, also it will benefit companies as well. So with that said, essentially, to enable this paradigm of a responsible data economy, and also to build a platform for a responsible data economy to enable this, it has a number of components that it needs to provide. So one, as I mentioned, we need to establish the notion of rights to data and have a way to essentially provide a immutable log of the rights to data and how the data can be utilized. For example, users can specify how their data should be utilized. And also, as the rights to data updates, it will continue to be updated, but I need to provide an immutable log for this history. So with that, essentially, at the bottom of this platform for a responsible data economy is a blockchain that enables the rights to data to be maintained in this immutable log, and also doesn't rely on any central party to maintain this immutable log. So it provides this decentralization, and so that essentially enables everybody to to specify and maintain control of their rights to data. So that's one component. And another component that actually really separates out this new platform for a responsible data economy versus the earlier, like a blockchain, for example, for Bitcoin and Ethereum and so on. And we call this actually a blockchain 3.0, is that here, comparing data to the other type of assets, for example, like the cryptocurrency tokens, and also, for example, for financial assets that's represented using tokens on a blockchain, which are essentially, they are just tokens to be acted on, like you transfer the tokens. You don't, other than that, you don't really do much to it. But however, with data, when you actually want to utilize data, you don't just transfer data, between two parties and so on. Especially if you want to enable controlled use of data, you actually need to compute on data. So first of all, to get value out of data, you need to compute on data. And also in this case, we want to provide a way to enable what we call controlled use of data, meaning that, for example, if you just get a raw copy of the data, then the person who gets a raw copy of the data can then essentially do whatever they want.
Right.
With the data. They can then go ahead and resell the data, or they can use the data for other purposes that's not aligned with the user's intention or specified requirements and so on. So it's much more complex. So that's why in this case, that's what we call it a blockchain 3.0, is that in this case, we do combine the ledger with essentially with the confined computing environments. Essentially, we call it secure computing environments that satisfy certain privacy requirements, so that when someone uses the data will be used in this confined environment. So the person who uses the data doesn't get a raw copy of the data. It can only do certain computation in this confined environment on the data. And the computation that it does on the data also need to be compliant to the data use policy. So then in this case, not only that we can maintain the immutable log of users' rights to data, but also we can essentially enable this new paradigm where data can be used in this controlled way, so that users can still maintain their rights to data even when the data is being utilized. So this way, essentially by combining the immutable log, and also you can then maintain a immutable log of how the data has been used. So this way, by combining this immutable ledger as well as the computing environment that provides these restrictions or provides these control, then for the first time, we can actually provide an environment and a solution that help address many of the challenges that I mentioned before, that can both help the user side to maintain control of their data and rights to data, and also help the consumer of the data as well to enable the data to be utilized in this controlled way to provide the privacy protection and enable data to be used in a responsible way. So that's why there are actually a number of different components that goes into it, including these different aspects.
So if I put my data on the Oasis blockchain, is there a name for the blockchain? Is it just the Oasis blockchain, or do you guys have a specific thing, like way that you talk about it?
The Oasis blockchain and platform.
So it's the blockchain is the immutable ledger of my rights to that data, but is it the actual data as well stored in the blockchain in a privacy preserving manner, or is the data itself decoupled from the ledger? Am I understanding that correct? I guess it's a question. I don't really know how it works.
That's a very good question, right? So the blockchain mainly maintains users' rights to data and how they want that data to be utilized. And the data is stored in encrypted form, and it actually can be stored anywhere. It can be stored in our platform. Our platform, we call it it provides separation of execution and consensus. So the ledger layer mainly, you don't really store the raw data in the ledger layer. The ledger layer mainly just stores the essential users' rights to data and the policies for how data is utilized. Mm-hmm. And the actual data, as I mentioned, is stored in encrypted form and can be actually stored anywhere. And then when the computation needs to happen, the data essentially can be fetched into the secure computing environment to enable data to be utilized.
Okay, that makes sense. And are there any live use cases of companies or products that are using this, and products that are built on top? I mean, I saw from your website, it looks like you guys have a couple of different offerings that are true products that businesses can leverage this technology with. But are there examples out there that you could walk me through of users that are interacting with their data in this way, and then companies or entities are coming in and running computations on that data?
Yeah, that's a very good question. So first of all, technology is very general, so it can apply to different segments, including healthcare, financial services, IoT, and a number of different domains. And in particular, we are actually in the process of launching a product in partnership with a genomic company in the area of genomic data. So in this case, when we actually launch this actually will be the first time where users can become owners of their genomic data. So for example, you may be familiar with 23andMe, which provides provides genomic data analysis to consumers. So 23andMe, for example, this year, even before the COVID-19, it had done a round of layoffs, citing the slowdown of adoption in consumer, and also citing a big reason for that is consumers' concern about privacy,
Right.
Privacy protection for their genomic data. So in this case, we are actually essentially launching a privacy-preserving version of this genomic, analysis in partnership with the genomic company. In particular, in this case, with this product and service, users actually will become owners of their data and will be able to maintain control of their data. So their genomic data is stored in encrypted fashion, and users can specify how they want the data to be utilized. For example, they can specify that they want to allow a genomic company to utilize the data to do genomic analysis on the data and provide the user with the results. And our platform will be able to enable this. So the genomic company, in this case, will not be able to get raw access to the user's data, and they can only perform the computation in this secure computing environment to then provide the genomic analysis to the user. So this is an example how technology like this can help users to better maintain control of their data, but at the same time to enable their data to be utilized in a privacy-preserving way.
Yeah, and I think the genomic use case is really interesting. It's something that I know another company in the space that was doing something similar, and talked about the problem that companies, researchers and companies that are trying to develop drugs, for example, or any kind of therapy, genetic therapy, need access to specific data, like specific people with specific kinds of attributes, and they want to study the genetic makeup of that type of person. And so how do you find people that are willing to give you their DNA for research, right? And now you guys are basically creating a database that they can access, run the computations on, and generate, valuable therapies out of potentially. Like, that's one use case, right? And I think that's what 23andMe was doing. They were just selling data to pharmaceutical companies wholesale without users really being aware. I mean, it was in the fine print, but that was what the uproar was about. And then the users weren't getting any value. In fact, the users were paying to send their data to 23andMe and then not getting any value out of it. So in this use case, the users would be paid. Like, do they get paid by the genomics company for accessing their data, or is that sort of an option that they have, that they could earn some kind of revenue off of their private data that they're now allowing?
Yes. So Right, so this technology essentially enables different types of use cases and different types of business models and so on. So, for example, when the user is just getting genomic analysis results from the genomic company, essentially the user is benefiting from that analysis. So then they can learn what potential predisposition they may have in terms of different types of diseases and so on. But also, right, like you said, another big challenge that we have seen in the healthcare domain is that, for example, it's actually really difficult for medical researchers to gain access to data to, for example, treatment machine models, to the type of analysis they want, and then in this case, right, the technology can also enable users to either donate their data to certain nonprofits for medical research, but then also, again, in this case, still just enabling that their data will only be used by certain entities for like medical research and not allow raw data to be copied out, or they can like for pharmaceutical companies, if they want to, use the data for developing a certain drug and so on, so they can also offer different compensation and award model where users can even share some of the profits from certain developments and so on. And so that's another nice thing about having this immutable ledger as well. So essentially, it can log how the data has been utilized and allow attribution of essentially the value that's being created from the data.
Okay, that's really cool.
Right. So, for example, in my research, also we have been developing new methods to try to value data as well. For example, try to figure out for a given trained machine learning model how much contribution each data points, each set of data points have contributed to the particular utility of this trained machine learning model. And we've identified certain solutions, such as the Shapley value based approach, actually provides uniquely suitable solutions given a certain set of goals in this area. So these methods can also help in distributing value that's created from a certain data sets from the trained machine models and so on.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting, and I guess it would be correct to say too that there's part of that value distribution is from the resulting data that's created from the computation, right? Because you run a computation, and then there's some more data that gets produced by that more information or data that gets produced from the computation, and you can now link that back to the original data set as well. And it's kind of interesting to think about in the future how your ecosystem in the marketplace around the data that you're, the marketplace around in the ecosystem that you're building will evolve around that. Yeah.
Right, exactly. So that's why we call this platform for responsible data economy. Is that it enables a new paradigm for how data can be utilized, both providing stronger privacy protection and also enable the value of the data to be better attributed to enable the various contributors to get more benefits in a more fair way as well. And I also wanted to mention that we actually next week will be launching the Responsible Data Summit. Actually, let me put it. So on July 28th, starting July 28th, we'll be launching the summit called the Responsible Data Summit that really focuses on a lot of these questions that we have been discussing here in terms of how data can be utilized in a responsible way, what type of technologies can help with this, and what type of approaches and frameworks in regulation and so on can also help with this, and also looking at especially given the current pandemic environment, how what are the challenges in using data to help us fight the pandemic, and also how we can better develop responsible data use even in the time of a pandemic.
Yeah, I'd love you to expand on that a little bit. You know, I think that's very timely, the point about the pandemic and leveraging your platform and maybe AI to help us do things like contact tracing, or I don't know, what are your thoughts on that? What are some things that you and your team are looking at as far as a contribution that your company or technology could make to help with that fight?
Yes, yeah, that's a very good question. I think in particular, we do see a lot of challenges with the pandemic. On one hand, you know, every day things change really fast. With the potential exponential growth of the pandemic, really being able to, for example, identify new infections and better control the infections in a really timely manner, it makes a huge difference. In the same contact tracing, if you do it one day later, it's in terms of the overall growth curve, it can make a really huge difference. On the other hand, of course, here also we are talking about doing, you know, data analysis at a really large scale. If you want to do, for example, contact tracing well, you really need to essentially do this at a really large scale. You need to have high coverage, otherwise it won't work. Like the places or the people that you can cover will still it can lead to exponential growth of the pandemic. So there are many challenges, and the question, I think a lot of people ask the question: in this case, do we need to have the trade-off between privacy and utility? In this case, the efficacy for contact tracing and also the speed for contact tracing and so on. So the hope is that I think also this is a great time to discuss about this responsible data use technologies. Is that on one hand, I think if the technology doesn't really have this type of privacy protection and responsible data use, doesn't follow this responsible data use principles, then I think a challenge is that we are going to see adoption challenges. People are going to be afraid of adopting this type of technologies, and then in the end, it won't achieve the kind of results that we need. And on the other hand, given the advancement of privacy technologies, for this type of use case, we really can provide very strong privacy protection while still maintaining the efficacy of the contact tracing, of the kind of things that we, the results that we need. So in my own work, in my own team's work, we have been doing a few, we have been doing a few different developments. One is in collaboration with my research group, both at Berkeley and also at Oasis Labs, and also NUS. We have been developing a new protocol for the API. Essentially provides a stronger privacy protection than for example, the Google Apple exposure notification methods, so that we can enable this contact tracing where just users themselves finding out whether they have been exposed to carriers and so on, but in a way that's, for example, only the user learns about the results and no other information is being leaked to others and so on. So it really provides really strong privacy protection. And also in another project called Beatrice, by actually leveraging the kind of responsible data economy platform that we have been building, it really helps provide a unified platform and framework to essentially combine and unify different type of data sources and enable the data to be utilized overall in a privacy preserving way, and also in a distributed and decentralized manner. So I think one particular challenge that's a very good example of the complexity of responsible data use is that in order to do sufficient contact tracing, you actually need many different types of data and data sources. So besides, for example, installing a mobile app on your phone, and oftentimes you need information, for example, who have been traveled in the same flight or who have been staying in the same hotel around similar time frame, who have been eating at the same restaurant around a similar time frame, so that when you discover a carrier, you can actually really promptly know who else may have been infected and so on. But of course, in order to do this, you need different data sources besides from the mobile phone app, but also potentially from the airline, from the hotel, from the restaurant, and so on. Then if you are collecting all this information in a central place, then of course this can really cause huge potential privacy issues. And the question is how we can actually have a distributed secure computing fabric that can weave together these different data sources, but enable privacy computing across these different data sources in a distributed and decentralized way. So actually with the platform that we have been building this for responsible data economy, we also, the goal is to help enable this type of use cases as well, to actually enable this type of secure distributed computing fabric to enable this type of responsible data use in a more privacy preserving way.
Yeah, that's all great, and I think that's a great explanation about the importance of decentralization and securing the data and having it be privacy preserving. One of the things that we haven't talked about that I think is key to the system, the system that you're building, is trusted execution environments. I know that you all are working on an open source piece of hardware that, when I first read about it, it was maybe 2 years ago. I can't remember when it was that you guys announced it, but I thought it was really exciting, and I had no idea what trusted execution environments were at the time. But I learned that from looking through your work. Could you just briefly, for everyone listening, explain what a trusted execution environment is and why having an open source trusted execution environment, which is a hardware device, is important?
Mm-hmm. Right, so as I mentioned, one important aspect for this platform for responsible data economy is to enable a controlled use of data. So essentially, you can view it as almost a way of computing encrypted data. So when you use the data, you don't get a raw copy of the data. You only get to perform certain computation on the data. And one way to do that is actually by utilizing what's called secure hardware in a trusted execution environments. One way to think about it is like essentially as a black box where you put the data into the black box and you run computation in the black box. And in the end, you get the computation results, but nothing else. And this way, the raw data doesn't get leaked out, and then it gets copied out, and so on. So this type of black box can enable this type of controlled use of data. And so then, in order for this to provide the security guarantees, the black box has to be really secure and provide the strong security guarantees. And there has been various commercial solutions building this type of black box. Over the years, different hardware manufacturers have all been developing this type of solutions, also called secure enclaves. However, all the solutions are closed source, so it's very difficult actually for the users and for the general public to understand how those black boxes were built and what kind of security guarantees they really provide. And there have been security issues for some of these black box, for some of these closed source solutions. There have been patches issued, but still the closed source nature makes it difficult for us to really know what kind of security guarantees it can provide. And also given the importance of this issue and the importance of building a solution for this. And so if we have approval secure solutions for this type of black box, then the impact for building secure systems is huge. It can really build a strong foundation for building different types of security solutions on top. So given this, we have been developing an open source solution called Keystone as an open source secure enclave built on top of RISC-V, which also has open source, it's an open source RISC architecture and so on. So Keystone, we have done open source release, and it's great to see the community supports actually around the globe. We have gotten contributions, code contributions, bug reports from around the globe from contributors from the community, and you can try it out on different platforms, both in terms of using the RISC-V running on the RISC-V chip, and also run it on the FPGA and also in emulation environments. And it's really easy to try out. If you just go to Keystone Enclave site, you can see the information there. And we are really looking forward to working with the community together to make this open source secure enclave reality, to actually have the hardware to support this solution.
Very cool. I just want to check with you on time real quick. I know that we're about 5 minutes after the hour. Do you still have some more time to talk, or how are you doing?
Yeah, if needed, right, we can talk for a few more minutes. And I think we also probably have a lot of material already, but happy.
We're good. I always ask this. We can sort of wrap up, but I always ask a question at the end of everybody who comes on. Is there anything else that what have I not asked you that I should have asked that you wanted to talk about?
Oh, and also I think I should mention for the Responsible Data Summit, for more information, you can go to responsibledata.ai. And so there you can see more information about the summit. We have an amazing lineup of speakers. We have a number of general award winners talking about their work in using data to fight the pandemic in a responsible way, and also the development of different types of responsible data technologies.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for taking the time to be here today. I really appreciate it. It's been awesome chatting.